Well, hello, my silky friends. How are you doing? It's good to see you, Yo Butterfly. Hey, I am going to let y'all know that perhaps, okay, no, this isn't going to be a lighthearted show at all. This one's very heavy for me personally. And, but Brain Bungle may come in. He may show up in the chat. He may come in and just kind of sit on panel. Because it affects both of us. And I know if you're not in the church world, which I'm not really, which is why like this scandal has been, breaking for months, literally months. I only heard about it on Saturday, and it was like kind of weird because I was listening to a completely different topic, a channel that I watch. It just talks about YouTube, and he referenced this, and all of a sudden I was like, oh no. So I started looking it up, and hello Margaret, how are you? Let me highlight y'all. And yeah, so I know a lot of people may not know what this is about. And the reason, okay, I'm not just doing this scandal just for scandalous reasons, okay? I'm doing this because in the midst of researching this scandal, I came across a little tidbit that is actually a crime case. Now, it is so close to Micah Miller, like it's uncanny, of the same principles in which this woman, this young bride, was only married for 2 months when she unalived herself. And the reasons, like, he's not the same as JP, but he is extremely controlling. You have all these behaviors. Whereas we learned, about JP, we first learned about Micah and her passing away, and then we started digging. So we kind of went backwards in that case and then found out all this stuff, right, that's come to light. Well, in this case, I wanted to give you the background first, okay? Because when we start getting into it, it won't make sense. Like, why did they sweep this under the rug? Why was this allowed to happen? Why? Well, the answer is simple if you know the culture of, it's called IHOPKC. It stands for, it's not pancakes. It's International House of Prayer in Kansas City, Kansas. And it's so hard for me to talk about this case because there was a period of years there that I really, really loved, and I watched their stuff online. I was never a real big fan, honestly, of their pastor, Mike Bickle. And it's because when I watched his stuff compared to other things, I really never knew what he was saying. I'm like, it sounds like you're saying good stuff, but I don't know. It just didn't, it did not catch me. But now IHOP has something that is extremely unique. They have a 24/7 open prayer room there. And it's affiliated with Forerunner Church and Forerunner Music and all this kind of stuff. Well, back in the day, and this was around, oh gosh, I think he started the prayer room in 1999. But back at this time, around 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, is when I got introduced to IHOP and their music. And at that time, in different places, I led worship about, 4 or 5 years during that period of time, up till the middle of 2013. Now, I still participate on worship teams, but I don't lead. So during this time, I was very much into the music, church culture. I loved IHOP, and even we wanted it to go 24/7, but I started a prayer room in our area where we would take one day a month and go 24 hours. We wanted to expand it. It's still something that I would love to do. But because of that, like, I loved International House of Prayer. And some of the worship leaders that were in that prayer room were just phenomenal. And my very favorite one was a woman named Misty Edwards. And, I got introduced to her music after she had had like 2 albums out already. And so I was catching up. And it was, at that time, it was just the best thing I had ever heard. And then she came out with a third one that blew the first 2 out of the water. And I never led worship without doing at least 1 or 2 Misty Edwards songs. Like, I just didn't. And so I noticed somewhere around 2012, I guess, trying to think what year, maybe 2011, 2012, something like that. She was dropping a new album. I was so excited. And I got it, and it was like, wait a second. This doesn't sound like her. I mean, it sounds like her voice, but these songs are just not the same. Like, they're just not hitting. Okay? They're just not. And I thought, okay, maybe it was just an experimental album. The next one she put out, I couldn't connect with anything else that she ever did. And I always thought that's weird. I wonder what's going on in her life that is affecting her music that much. But you go on. So it hurts. I'm not talking about this to sensationalize it. I'm talking about it because I know that people are hurting. We've been talking about church hurt, and we're also going to talk about how this happened. How do you take something, a God-given idea, a whole thing, you've got everything. How do you let this happen, and how do we stop it from happening in our lives? Whether it's, your personal relationships with people or your church or whatever. Last night we talked about narcissism. And so we're going to go and look. Now, I'm going to give you the synopsis because as we started, there was one scandal that came out last October, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But then, shortly thereafter, more information comes out. Second scandal. Third scandal. Like, it just keeps boiling out of there. So, yeah, let me show you this. I don't know where Brain is. But, I talked to him about it today because I said, did you know this happened? Because we were both, at that time, all up into IHOP and another church as well. As a matter of fact, last summer I was talking to a friend of mine who, we were talking about, she's someone that I met through my channel, but now we're personal friends. And we talk on the phone. Like, when we get on the phone, we talk for hours. It's just the way it is. And we were talking about, hey, because she had some affiliation with them. We were like, hey, let's meet. She lives in a different state. Let's meet and let's go to Kansas. Let's go to IHOP. Well, is it Kansas? Is it Kansas City, Kansas? I think, not Missouri. All right. I could be wrong. But now Mike Bickle, that's this guy on the left. Mike Bickle started a church. Actually, I think he was a youth leader. He was a pastor by the time he was 24. And he started out in St. Louis. But then, after a little while, he ended up moving to Kansas City. Now, hello, Rabbit. All right, so this is the original news that came out. Now, let me tell you, I didn't put it in the description yet, but I will later on. There is a blog. There's a webpage called the Roy's Report, ROYS, the Roy's Report, and she documents a lot of stuff on different different churches, and I don't think it doesn't sound malicious. I mean, I don't know her, but we need to know. Hello, Flat Earth. So anyway, this is what happened. And you can go on YouTube and I've been listening to a lot of the personal testimonies And I'm not going to get into all that because I'm trying to get to the crime part of this case. But different leaders, different people affected, even one of these ladies that came forward and say that they had been essayed. You can watch these kind of things on YouTube, and you can tell they're sincere, and people who are sincerely hurt. Why, again, we're going to break down the process of how this happened, because this didn't happen. When we look at Mike Bickle, we're not looking at somebody who had an indiscretion one time 20 years ago, although that's what he tried to say in the beginning. We're looking at decades and decades of abuse and decades of people, just like in J.P. Miller's church, of elders, of people knowing that there was a problem and not stopping it. I mean, it gets, when you get into these different characters, if you want to really go down the rabbit hole, you get into some crazy stuff. One guy who was in an affair, I'll just tell you this is crazy, all right? I'll tell you who it is when we get there. But this one guy, he's married. He has, a family. He's high up in the church. This woman tells him, you know what? God told me, because, there's the trump card. God said, I had a pastor one time that said it's hard to argue with that. That's the trump card. You flip it down, and it's like, because you can't argue, because you don't know. You don't know if God told somebody to do something. You don't know. Unless it just goes against scripture, you're kind of like, I think it's a bad idea. And then they throw that, oh, but God said. All right. So this lady in the church, she's married. The guy that she's talking about in leadership is married. She says, God said, bing, 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 trump card. God said, you will live to be 120 years old, but only if I fix your food, like all your food, 3 meals a day. I'm going to cook for you. I'm going to make sure you have the best of stuff, these essential oils, whatever, she's into. He says, okay. She comes to the church every day. All right, listen to this. She comes to the church every day with food. Okay, that's fine. That's great. You feel like God said to do that? Drop your little basket off and get your honey out the door. Oh, but no, that is not what this woman did. She goes in, she brings his meals. She goes in his office or whatever room they were eating in. They lock the door. And they're in there for hours. Hours. Now, I don't know how long it takes you to eat, but even a good meal, it's probably only going to take 20, maybe 30 minutes for me to down it, okay? If you want to sit there and chit-chat, whatever. It's not going to take me that long to eat. Certainly not hours. Certainly not two married people, not married to each other, in a room for hours with the door locked. Now, this went on for 6 years. 6 years. Finally, we'll get there. It's discovered they're having an affair. Okay, this is the kind of craziness I'm talking about. In all, it boggles the mind to me. How did leadership allow this to happen, to go on? I mean, and yet, it said that this guy would not go anywhere with another lady from the church, like if they had business or something. Oh no, I can't ride in a car with a woman because I'm married. Which that is a thing that we do practice. If you're married, in your, like, I know what happens sometimes in business meetings, whatever, but in practice for years, if you are a married person, you do not ride in a car by yourself. Now, if you got other people there, that's fine. But you're not alone with the opposite sex. Okay? It's just because of appearances. Oh, guess who I saw riding down the road? It was just her and him in that car. I saw, yeah, that's the kind of thing. So we avoid all that kind of stuff. So he wouldn't ride in the car with another woman, but he would let this married woman come and stay in his office, lock the door, for hours at a time for 6 years. Do you understand the insanity of this kind of stuff. Let's see. Yeah, what's up with all these so-called pastors and SA? Exactly. But you hit the nail on the head, Flat Earth. So-called. So-called. Hello, Daniel Berry. Good to see you. Margaret, it took 6 years to notice. Yeah, sorry, I'm not that kind of religion. Yeah, yeah. But again, this is the weird culture. Now, a lot of us that supported IHOP, whether we're just buying their music or whatever during the years, we had no idea of the inner workings. That's a whole bunch of states away from me. I don't know what's happening over there. All right, so initially the news breaks, and to make it short for you, this guy, Mike Bickle, has a woman that is still known as a Jane Doe. As far as I could tell, her name has never actually come out, although some others in the scandal have been very free about talking. She goes to the elders and she says, I have a confession. I need to let you know something. Mike Bickle has groomed me from a very young age, and there was some SA going on, and this happened many, many times, and this is, wanted to let you know that he's done this. And so the leaders first were trying to, downplay it, trying to say, I don't know, is this woman believable? But she kept talking to people. And so, it gets around, there's an issue here. So when it becomes apparent that this woman is not going to shut up, and she's not going to quit talking and bringing this topic up, they have a Friday night, IHOP did have a Friday night service. So at the Friday night service, Mike Bickle gets up, and the elders and all this, and they make an announcement, and they say a prophetic word, okay? Hold on, I meant to do it this way. A prophetic word. The prophetic word is, there is a dark horse coming. It's the enemy. He's sent to attack us with false allegations, this kind of stuff to destroy the ministry. And everybody's like, okay, first of all, let me explain to you that Mike Bickle was a prophet. Or, I don't know. Well, I don't know what his calling was. They called him prophet. But he was very gifted, I guess, in prophecy and stuff of that nature. So, he's the one that founded the church. It was always a prophetic thing. Prophetic gifts always flowed through there. So, Mike gets up and he says, oh yeah, this is coming. It's the enemy. It's this dark horse. Well, now the people who were already in the loop, and they already knew what this was about, and they knew what was coming, a lot of them really believed that Jane Doe she's not number one now, but we'll just say Jane Doe. They already believed her because they had interviewed her, they had checked into details. They believed that this was a problem. So when Mike gets up and he talks about this, like the church, a lot of the church members are like, ah. Now this is last October of 2023. And so, yeah. They have another meeting. At which point some of the witnesses say it just became a huge, cussing each other out match. Everybody was cursing everybody. It was crazy. Well, I could see that happening because you had a lot of people wanting to protect Mike. They did not believe that Mike Bickle, because he was the grand poobah, okay, of IHOP. It didn't work. IHOP didn't work without Mike Bickle. He was, commander-in-chief, and it was built on him, which is your first problem, of course. So time rocks on. and news of the scandal gets out. Well, then you have another person coming up saying, you know what? Because here was Mike's statement from the very beginning. He's like, yes, when he finally had to say something and couldn't blame it on the dark horse, Mike Bickle says, you know what? This happened. Yes, it wasn't like a full-blown affair. It was inappropriate touching. But this happened 20 years ago, and I have repented. I'm sorry. Like, I never brought it up because I repented of it. It happened so long ago. All right. If that had been the case, and you only had one victim, or you had one indiscretion, I'm not saying that one is okay. Don't misunderstand me. But if it was something, your leaders should have already known about it, and that you had repented and made things right with that person. You do whatever you got to do. But that wasn't the case. That, in fact, was a lie. Because it wasn't one person. It was several people. And he started grooming them at around age 14, 15. Very similar to Micah Miller. What is it with these guys? What is it? What is wrong with you? So, then you have the third. I think it's the third Jane Doe. Her name is Tammy Woods. Now, you can look her up on YouTube and you can see her testimony. She's done interviews with people. And what she had to say is that she was in a youth group. She met Mike when she was about 14, and he immediately asked her to babysit. Well, where have we heard this before? Hello, JP and Micah. Right? Same story. Different names. He asked her to babysit because he's 24 at the time, and he's got a wife and kids. So she starts babysitting, and then he starts picking her up and taking her home. And then he starts picking her up from school. And then he takes her different places. Like, he's just always there as a kind of big brother, daddy type, you know? He's just always there. And he asks her to do these, different things, help him out. He's helping her. He's taking her to, she played racquetball, taking her to practice, picking her up. It's weird. Until one day, he pulls off on the road and he says to her, I need to know something. Do you feel for me like more than a friend? And she's 14. Now maybe 15, because this has been rocking on a little bit. Of course, at that age, you look at this, guy that is like kind of like a dad figure, but like he's the pastor of the church and you're getting all this attention. I mean, she said, I probably was like crushing on him because I was 14. Well, yeah. I mean, and so she said she was extremely embarrassed and she thought she was going to get in trouble because she knew enough to know that that was inappropriate feelings for your pastor who is a married man, right? But she wanted to be truthful and she just said, yes. And he said, well, do you know that I feel the same way too? And she's like, oh. Then, Mr. Prophetic. Okay. Remember what I said last night about gifts? We're going to talk about gift, not character. Mr. Prophetic Gift says, well, let me tell you something, Tammy. My wife is going to die young. Yeah, it's already been, like, it's going to happen. She's going to die young, and when she does, I'm going to marry you. This girl's only 15. But he's been grooming her. So this goes on. Now, their relationship didn't go, I don't know. And look, I don't want to know the details. And if y'all find them out, I don't even want to know. It was not complete, like, how do I say this on YouTube? It wasn't the full act, but it was everything. I think Tammy said it's everything but, there's a lot of areas. There's a lot of inappropriate areas. Y'all ain't kids. She said they had that kind of relationship. And this went on and on into years in high school. When she was in high school, her lunch break, she would have to call him and talk to him. And she said it isolated her because she was racked with guilt, and he was saying, nobody can find out about this. And he told her at that time, if somebody does find out about this, you're going to have to take the blame. Basically, you're going to have to say, you came on to me, and whatever. What a thing to put on a kid, right? So she gets very, very detached from her family and her friends because she's afraid somebody's going to find out. Plus, he's pulling her away. He's always got something for her to do. He has these long-term plans for them. Still, wife's still alive. He ends up moving the church or moving himself to Kansas City. She is still in St. Louis. I'm going to try to catch up with you, Flat Earth. So anyway, when he leaves, she's devastated, brokenhearted. But he moves, but he's still calling her. He's still coming to St. Louis to visit from, time to time. And he's telling her, when you graduate from high school, I want you to come up here and be my secretary. So she doesn't really feel good about that, but she's like, I want to go to college. Like, it's not an option. My family's telling me I'm going to college. Long story short, she goes to college. She meets a guy she wants to marry. Mike calls her the day of her wedding. I mean, just with his BS. All right. Time rocks on, and she never does say a word. And he tells her through the years they have maintained, because of the church relationship, because of him knowing people here and there from Kansas City to St. Louis, and the families being integrated and conferences, whatever. There are occasions for the two churches to intermingle. So he's always telling her through the years, make sure you don't say anything. So finally, she says when this came out, she still wasn't planning on saying anything, because she said it was no longer about Mike and protecting Mike. It was about her family. Like, she didn't want her family, even though it didn't affect, like, this all happened before she met her husband. She didn't want her family even associated with a scandal. So she had decided not to say anything. She said, until I read Jane Doe's letter that she put, her affidavit, that she put everything, or I think it was an affidavit. Anyway, it was her statement of what happened. And she said, I felt like I was reading my own story. Started out the same way. Told her the same prophetic word. My wife's going to die young. And, I'm going to marry you, Jane Doe. She said it just made her sick. And that was the point that she's like, you know what? I'm not staying silent. So we started with that. And let me just tell you real quick where that is, because we're going to go into some other scandals I'm going to pull up. The reason I didn't pull up an article for him, there are so many. Even on this one website, there are so many articles as different things are happening. As woman after woman comes forward as he's denied. And then like, okay, well, yeah, it did happen, but it wasn't what you think. It was 20 years ago. BS. You're full of it. You are full of it. So I am going to pull up this. The second thing that happens, so now we're embroiled in this whole thing, right? It's a big scandal. It keeps coming out, and the church is backing him. This is the problem. You have a group that is opposing, they're representing the victims, but IHOP leadership is still behind this guy. They're like, we're still going to support him. We believe in restoration. And let me tell you the worst part about all this. And I've read a lot of statements, and I've read some apologies from people that I do respect. Say my initial statement, I didn't address the victim. Yeah, sorry about that. I get it, sort of. Think, to be honest with you, and I'm not going to name a name because I really, really, really like this particular person. But he comes out and he makes a statement about restoration for Mike Bickle. We need to restore him. He doesn't say anything about the victims. He catches a lot of heat for that. So he makes a second statement. Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah, the victims. I don't 100% buy that. I don't, it doesn't sound good to me. I don't think that, I think you weren't, I think that you weren't honest. I think that you still wanted to protect the ministry. I'm sorry. Love this guy. Think it was a terrible, terrible way to handle it. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't trust anybody. Nobody. All right, so the church, first they say, okay, then Mike Bickle, they're like, okay, you got to go because we're just, we're losing money. And the church is like, please support us, whatever. Then they say, well, Mike's gone. They had this big long meeting. We're going to rebrand. We're going to rebrand IHOP and we're going to start again. Now, that might be what they're in the process of doing. I'm going to tell you something. Stay away. I'm not kidding. I don't care how many times they rebrand. This is not a business. These are people's lives, their souls. This isn't a brand. This isn't a business. Yeah, I know you run your church as a business, clearly, and a lot of you do. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to answer to God for that. You can hate me for saying it. I don't care. Church is not a business. Yes, do you have to pay the light bill and everything else? But here is the problem. When you run it as a business, this is what happens. There's no spirit there. You can't do both. What did Jesus say? You can't serve God and mammon or money. You can't serve God and money. Think about that. When you're building your big mega churches, you can't serve God and money. You got to choose one. And if you're choosing like this and you're going to rebrand, guess which one you're choosing? It ain't God. Best thing you can do is disband and scatter to the winds. And every one of you that were involved, repent, take some time for restoration, think about what you did and how bad was it. If it wasn't illegal, you just need to take some time off. Go sit in another person's ministry, preferably in another state. Get far away from each other. Learn some humility. Try to serve God in spirit and truth. Not mammon. You need to run as far as you can. Far as you can from that place. All right. That's my opinion. All right? Okay. I don't care if you like it. I'm not here to make friends. Not necessarily. I've got some friends, a few. No, when it comes to, here's the thing. When I do true crime and I'm just talking about a crime case, I hope I'm entertaining enough. And serious enough to engage y'all to get behind a cause. When I'm talking about the church, no. When I'm talking about this kind of stuff, I do not care. Do not care who's hide at Chaps. Because I don't answer to you. I answer to someone much higher. All right, so this is the one. So after I don't know. May 20th or something like that was IHOP's last official service. So I don't know what they're doing. Rebranding, closing the doors. I don't know. I think you need to burn it down. The prayer room is still going. There have been some protests about stuff at the prayer room, honestly. So, we'll talk about... Let me tell you something. The unaliving case that I'm going to cover has to do directly with the prayer room. Okay? Now, then this headline came out, and we're going to look at this. Now, some of you, if you have been listening to worship music for a while, you may recognize Kevin Prosh, his name. I was like, who? Misty Edwards, I know. Kevin Prosh, I'm sure I've heard a lot of his music. Don't know who he is. Yeah, Yoli, it is a case by case thing. There are bad people in every industry, including churches. Uh, yeah, absolutely. Um, some of the worst people I've ever met, I met in church. Yeah, yeah, me too. Me too. And here's the thing, I hate to say this, I really do, but it's the truth. Here in my area, there are so many churches and so many Christians and whatever. And both when I was married and as a single person, here's the thing, I will not, because of bad experiences from my Christian friends, from my friends, I will not take my car in to be serviced by a person who has a fish on their logo or in there. When I walk in and they have something about being Christian on the doors, because we do it a lot down here, businesses. Once you know I'm a Christian, but I tell you what, I've never been screwed over by somebody who was not a Christian. Why? Because a lot of people hide behind that symbol. And you know what? They do good business because they want to keep their business going. The Christian business person around here relies on the fact that, oh, they're Christian. They're going to be supported by their friends. It doesn't matter how you treat them. You'd rather do business with a Christian person, wouldn't you? Heck no, I wouldn't. Not if you're going to lie and steal and con me. No, I wouldn't. I need a car that needs to be fixed. I need it to be fixed at a fair price, and I want you to guarantee your work, that you didn't screw something up and then charge me for that. That's a terrible thing to have to say about my own brothers and sisters. I'm using a lot of air quotes here. That is a terrible thing to have to say about my brothers and sisters in my area that I know, that I go to church with, or used to go to church with. Not anymore. Yeah. But I won't go. I'd rather have anybody else work on my car. Again, are they Christians? Doesn't seem too Christ-like to me. Right? You're stealing from me. You're lying to me about what's wrong and how much it costs. And you're not really doing the work correctly. That honestly sounds like a crime, not just a non-Christian thing, okay? Yes, hiding behind religion. They do it all the time. Let's see. You know what, Yaya? I will agree. Atheists are some of the kindest people. That is true. I've known a lot of atheists. And I want to tell you something. I mean, it breaks my heart to think that, they might not be going into eternity with me, but I have to agree. They're nice people. They really are. All right, so this headline comes up, and I'm going to show you this. I'm going to read a little bit of this article, because down the rabbit hole we go, right? So not only has Mike Bickle been in multiple years of affairs with multiple underage girls, or barely of age girls, and we don't even know, because you figure there's probably a lot more that haven't stepped forward. There always is. So he's been doing this for decades, and for decades his leadership has looked the other way, or swept it under the rug, or some kind of something, right? So I see this headline, and oh my gosh, I am so brokenhearted over this one. And I'm going to read part of it because it's important. This one is not only about an affair, all right? I'm not saying it's okay by any stretch, but an affair is like, it's two people's sins, okay? It's two people in the church who really screwed up. But that's not what this is about. I wish this was a simple affair. Oh, but no. Let me go over here. All right. So you have Misty Edwards. Kevin, you see, you can he's significantly older than her. Significantly. Um, all right, he had two well-known Christian worship leaders, Kevin Prosh and the Edwards, privately confessed to a years-long affair that started before Prosh and his second wife divorced. All right. According to Brent Steno, Edwards told him about an affair with Prosh in December of 2021. Steno is a former staff member at IHOPKC and Bickle's personal ministry, Friends of the Bridegroom. Steno and Edwards told him the affair was ongoing and had begun 7 years earlier, around 2014. Wow. 7 years. All right, so Prosh and his second wife, Shelley, divorced in August 2016. Shelley is Mike Bickle's sister. Like, they're just keeping all this crap in the family. I think sometimes they do this because who's going to tell on who? You already know what's going on. It's gross. All right, now here's the problem. When Misty went to leadership and she confessed, hey, I've been having an affair with this guy for 7 years. All right, now Misty was single. But Misty, I don't know. Some people say that she took a vow of celibacy and never getting married, whatever. I don't know if that's true or not, or if that was a hype. What I do know is that she was single, but he was not. Now, the problem is that Steno said that Edwards also confessed to another secret involving a man she refused to name. So we're assuming, okay? This is assuming, we don't know. Only Steno knows. We assume that this was a physical affair like she had with Prosh, but it was somebody else in the church, and she would not even tell Steno, even though she was confessing everything, who this other man was. All right, so Steno reported, this is where it gets really sick. So Steno said he reported the affair and the other secret to IHOP, the leadership, in January of 22, but the leaders there did little to hold Edwards accountable or investigate the other secret, and instead retaliated against Steno. So this poor guy, she tells him, first of all, Misty Edwards was putting out a lot of music. She was one of the most popular people in the prayer room. I think they just call it the prayer room, but the 24/7. And they still, I don't know if they do, they probably still do now, but for years they live streamed it 24 hours a day. Anybody could go in there. Somebody was always in there praying. There was always music going. Sometimes there was teaching. There was always some kind of God-related activity, mostly worship and prayer. 24/7. Well, Misty would go in there and take hours at a time and lead worship, and she was extremely popular. Her music was extremely popular, and she was also a leader. She was on the executive leadership team. All right, and they went through several different names of what they called it, but she was one of the high up leaders. So she is there. I mean, y'all going to see how much this resembles JP's church as we go on. During the alleged affair, she released 7 albums. She stepped down from the team. But, they're like, okay, wait a second. All right, this is horrendous. Misty steps down. This is the second devastation, right? But people don't know yet, okay? Because we don't even know about Mike Bickle yet, but the elders knew. Nobody else knew. Wasn't public knowledge, right? They hushed it all up. Misty tells Steno tells the leadership, hey, she confessed to me, and look, there's a problem going on. We're going to see how deep that problem gets. The leadership attacks Steno, who's trying to help and make it right. They attack him. Now, going back to Prosh, who she said she had a 7-year affair with, he was a prominent worship leader in the Vineyard movement. Now, in 1999, he confessed to a string of adulterous relationships. Not just one or two. Not just oopsie. Not that that's okay either. But he had a string of them. And despite his confession, first of all, when that happened, he should have been completely sat down. You will not lead worship, period. You need to sit somewhere. Preferably, quietly in the back. Why don't you sweep the floors? Why don't you learn some humility? Why don't you start over with God? All right? No, this is 1999. He admits all this. It was either that same year or the next year that he was leading worship again. At IHOP, at different places. Now, he wasn't the worship leader, but he was up there on stage doing the same thing he always did. Where is the... Come on. Where is that... what is the word I'm looking for, y'all? I don't want to say punishment. That's not... because this is the problem in these kind of churches, is they're all about restoration. Yeah, God's about restoration too. But not like this. Not like, smack your hand. Okay, you did bad. All right, but Jesus still loves you. Come on, let's keep going. That's not what this is. There's not true repentance here. You have to have a time of sitting down, and it's called, it's called the consequences of your actions. And without the consequences of your actions, you learn nothing. Sometimes you don't learn anything anyway because you're just dumb. But, or headstrong or whatever, or you don't care. Anyway, he's leading. Just a few months later, he's back up on the stage, back to his old tricks. And in 2002, he is now a worship leader somewhere else. Look at him. This is him, Kevin Prosh. All right. Now, what we find out, and I'm going to go back to where I can see you for just a second, because I couldn't see the, hold on, let me text Brain. I thought he was coming. Because he said he asked me, he wanted to be on this one tonight. Or he wanted to comment on one. All right, here we go. Misty, as it turns out, this 7-year affair with Prosh, she was kind of coerced. Because in this article, we go on and it talks about how Prosh, he knows, he admits, he has a way with women. They just flock to him like flies. Bees to honey, whatever you want to say about that. Oh, he's listening. Brain is in there listening. All right, so here manipulating Misty. And in this article, he goes on and on to say, yeah, I knew what I was doing. Like, I did it. He's not ashamed. There is no shame in his game. He's like, yeah, I realized I have a gift with women. They flock to me. I know exactly how to manipulate them. I know, how to basically get what I want. Been doing it for years. This is the man that you have sat right back up on stage. This is the man that you said, it's okay. You can lead worship because you're so gifted. You're so anointed. We need you. God needs you. We talked about this last night, does he? No. God is in no need of your services. Okay? He appreciates them. Yes, he does use them. It's God. He doesn't need your services. So get that out of your head. So, during this 7 years, Misty, look, he's an old geezer. I don't know what she ever saw in him to start with, but he was very manipulative. He knew how to work. He knew how to play her. So then, when she wants to break it off, Prosh is like, oh, well, you see, there's a problem. I've got a recording of you telling me about your indiscretions with somebody else in this church, the one he who shall not be named. And I want to tell you right now, a lot of people speculate it was Mike Bickle. We don't know. We don't know. But that is the huge speculation at this time. It could have been anybody, really. She had some kind of indiscretion. She confided in Prosh. He had it on tape. He blackmails her all this time. Listen to this. It gets insane. She wants to get away. She can't get away because this is over her head. She knows if anybody finds out, she's going to lose her job. She's going to be sat down. She's not going to be able to be in the prayer room and all this kind of stuff. So she wants desperately to get away from Prosh, but she can't. Because like JP, he's a control freak and he's controlling all of her stuff. And here she is. She doesn't want to lose her reputation. It would have been far better for her to have done that then. So what does she do? Well, she devises a plan. She wants to get away from him, but she knows that he's got these recordings on his computer, and so she thinks if I can just get close enough to him, because she tells his ex-wife, because they were having an affair. He was still married, I guess, to Shelley at that time. And she's like, well, yeah, I know it was wrong, but we were talking about marriage. How are you talking about marriage to somebody who's already married? Hello? Like, what kind of twisted up Bible are you reading? All right. So, Misty thinks if I could just get closer to Kevin Prosh, I could find this stuff and I could get rid of all these recordings and then I could break free. So what does she do? She leaves IHOP. She tells everybody she's going to Israel. She's gone for a year or two. She sends back some videos of her out there, some pictures every now and again. Hey, from Israel, here's me, singing in Israel. What she actually did is she moved in with Kevin Prosh, went into hiding. He was already controlling her life. So, she's there for about 6 months or so, and she's able to break into his computer. She gets that file. She destroys it. She thought, done, right? Okay, I can keep hiding this. I can go back to IHOP, resume my duties. It's going to be good. Well, she gets back to Kansas City, and she starts getting messages from Prosh, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I still have recordings. I have them on other devices. You didn't get all of them. Well, you should have known that. God, if you've got blackmail, look, I'm not going to tell you how to be a good blackmailer, but I'm thinking I could have done that a lot better. Anyway, so he's like, you can come back here, or I can release the tapes. She goes back. All right. So all this comes out. Let me go back to over here. So this is the whole twisted thing. She doesn't want to be, and you see some of these, this is her text to, that might have been to Stino. Kevin and I had a relationship. That part is true, but we were considering getting married. Okay, I think that one was to Shelley. All right, so, it goes on to, Prosh is a piece of work. I'm just telling you. He is a piece of work. Other people overheard a conversation between Prosh and other people. And basically, they know that this is true, that Misty did have some kind of relationship with somebody. In the meantime, while she's hanging out with Prosh, look at this. In 2018, they were in a car together, charged with driving under the influence and public intoxication. Prosh was also charged with failing to stop at a stop sign. He doesn't have a shirt on. They're doing a field sobriety test on him. And she said at first she just drank a little bit. Then she's like, yeah, well, I actually, when it was time for her test, it's like, yeah, I had a lot of wine and a few vodkas. Um, yeah, so you had all this. I don't know. I didn't see any of this either. There's Mr. Wonderful right there, shirtless. And there's her. I'm going to skip over. Like, I'm not trying to. I really, this hurts my soul so bad. If you knew how much I admired this woman and how many songs of hers I sang, and like, it hurts. I know I'm being harsh, but when I mean this breaks my heart, and I tell you, I cried all day Saturday. It wasn't over Mike Bickle. It was this part right here. It was this part that somebody is so caught up in one sin that leads to another sin that leads to another and another and another and another lie and another lie. Because if you had told the truth in the beginning, yes, you might have been sat down when you had some kind of inappropriate relationship with somebody. Yeah, you probably would have been sat down, asked to leave, whatever. But at some point, you could have been restored. You could have went somewhere else. You could have let God take you a different direction. Do something besides this with your life. Because sin never ends and cover up never ends. That's why people get caught, because you can't tell a lie the same way. It's easy. People can tell when you're seeing the truth, when you're telling the truth. I mean, and police interviewers will tell you that. Like, look, the truth is always the same, always the same. When you tell a lie and people start asking you questions, you have to make up something to go with that lie, and then it's a big old ball, and it just spirals out, and then nothing makes sense, and we're all like, yeah, he lying. They guilty. They guilty. Okay, so this is what happens. So, I'll just tell you, long story short, they turn on everybody. Here's another one of Misty singing. They turn on everybody that tries to break this case. That when any of the leadership find out about anything that Prosh or Edwards or anybody else is doing, they sweep it under the rug. They hide it. They threaten people. They kick people out of their apartments. Now, let me tell you some other kind of crazy crap now. Let's see. Brain bungler. I think there are several moments in one's life going down a path such as this where they know the real choice is to confess, face the backlash, and move on. But the hole ever deepened. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And here's the thing, because we've looked at this with Micah Miller, JP. Remember, we went back to Wayne Miller and how he brought people over here from third world countries, from Pakistan, from Africa, from wherever, and he wasn't feeding them properly. They didn't have proper food, shelter, clothes. He wasn't paying them. He basically had slave labor, right? And we're all appalled. This is terrible. Let me tell you something about Mike Bickle. Same thing. Same thing. Now, I personally knew a girl, and I don't know, Bungle, you might remember her. I don't know if you were paying attention, but there was a girl that went to church with us. Real sweet girl. I think she was in her early 20s. She applied to be she wanted to go intern at IHOP. And to intern in the prayer room, you lived like kind of in a community. Like you lived you shared, not beds, but rooms. Kind of like a college dorm, only it was bigger. You had like maybe 5 people to one room. You basically gave your whole, I can't remember if it was, I think it was a year internship. You had to write a lot of essays. They did a lot of background check. Like you it was hard to get selected because they had so many, they said, they had so many people that were trying to get in and intern. And what you did is you worked the prayer room and anywhere else that IHOP needed you. But the primary thing is that you were supposed to be learning the Bible and you were learning worship and you were staff in the prayer room, which is, again, 24/7. So it was an honor to be chosen to intern. But your salary, okay, really, you didn't have a salary. And they were supposed to take care of all of your stuff, but apparently you still had some kind of rent. And your salary for all your 24/7 hours of slave labor was $100 a month. Yeah. And I was listening to stories today about people who were, in these situations, and they're like, oh, well, everybody would get up like I can't remember what day of the week. There was one day of the week that Panera would come and feed the students. They would get their Panera bread or whatever. I don't think, it wasn't like a huge thing, but they came consistently. And they're like, oh, we would get up at 4:30 in the morning because we knew Panera was going to be coming. And we were hungry. And they're trying to live. And then some of them said, we only got this much and yet we still had to pay rent out of that. So I don't understand how this economy went. But here's one of the things that I listened to from one of the financial people. And her name's Elizabeth. I can't remember her last name, but if you want to hear more about this, you can watch or listen to a podcast that's called Wake Up and Win. And these were some people, or the husband was somebody that worked at IHOP, and then he left before all this stuff happened. But they have, wow. They interview a woman named Elizabeth who had worked there in the financial part for like almost 20 years. And there were many times that she said she got so frustrated and she was upset and tried to tell Mike, like, look, we are bringing in bunches and bunches of money every month. Why are we not paying these interns? Like, why are we're not compensating them better? And she said the other people were not even getting a living wage. And she would say, how can we do this? Like, God's not going to bless us when we've got all this money for our staff. We're all getting good salaries, but these other people in the ministry, they're not even making a living wage, and that's not right. And, they would just shut her down. Shut her up. Again, does this sound like, the Micah Miller case? Of course it does, but we haven't even gotten to the part that really does. This is the whole culture. Apparently, Solid Rock took their, apparently they took their textbooks from IHOP. No, they took it from Wayne Miller, but you know what I'm saying? It's this whole craziness. And, like, who does this? Who thinks this is okay? All right, so, let's see. Let me go back over here. All right, I'm going to show you one more thing, and I'm going to do this one really, really quick, because that's pretty much the story with Misty and Kevin, and now it's all out. It's all out. People all know. We still don't know who the person was, but it's somebody. All right, now let me make sure you can see this. All right, this is something else that happened. Man, let's see. Hold on. Another thing. If it wasn't bad enough that Mike Bickle has been abusing young girls for decades, and that they're not paying their interns, or they're not even really providing for them or letting people in the church be provided for that are working their hind ends off, and your worship team is a big fat mess, affairs, cover-ups, blackmail. Let's go to his son. Well, he looks just like him, Luke Bickle. As it happens, Luke was having an affair with someone else in the church for years. Let's see. Allegations brought by the 5 alleged Jane Does. Okay, I think that's senior. Or is it senior? Okay. But this guy, there's a picture. There's a picture of the outside. Look at. I beg to differ. You are not exalting Jesus. Um, not when you treat people like this and you blackmail them. That's not exalting Jesus, but whatever. I still believe in the principle of 24/7, prayer and worship. I do. I would love to have it here. Not like this. All right. So everybody's, heartbroken when they find out about Bickle. And then they say that Bickle covered up his son's adultery. What? Who isn't having an affair here? As it happens, this is his son. Yeah. He was having an affair with another man's wife. They covered it up. I'm just going to make it short because I've talked so long now. You can look at this. This is on the Roy's report. It goes into detail, but basically the same thing. Now, this happened, I want to tell you, earlier in 2021. I can't. I can't get over these smiling faces. Honestly, I have to say this. Mike Bickle's on the left. He looks a little insane to me. I don't know. I'm looking at that face and I'm like, holy crap. But, I mean, you could be, just look at this. You could be looking at the same of, Wayne Miller and JP. Look, same thing. Generational foolishness. Generational corruption and crime. And taking God's for granted. Thinking you're somebody. We're going to talk about that. All right. So, as you go through there, the wife that Luke Bickle was having an affair with, I mean, again, everybody took the sides of Mike and Luke, and they kicked the husband out of the apartment where they were living, or house where they were living, because they were staff members. She took everything. Like, she did it twice. Nobody ever told them to stop. I believe when I was listening to, if I'm not mistaken, when I was listening to the people giving their testimony, their personal experiences, like the executive team, I believe it was Luke Bickle that was, and this woman that were in the room eating food, whatever, for hours. Now, these people right here, I believe this is part of, the advocate group. And I would love to get a hold of some of them and talk to them. All right. Now, it's still rocking on. Like I said, it's an unholy mess. And they have now created a culture of dishonesty, sin, whatever. Let's see what y'all are saying. Using people without remorse under the guise of religion. Yeah. And it happens a lot. Yes, your body is supposed to be a temple. I'm thinking this is the temple of doom over here. Let's see. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking there were a lot of people that were saying that were either church members or at some point they were saying, I felt like something was wrong. But they kept being shut down. All right. I don't think that there was any way that people were a part of IHOP for years and they never had something in their gut saying, something's not right here. Okay. But if you look at all of the testimonies of these people, they will say one consistent thing, and that is they were shut down. They were like shunned. They were, basically told all kind of stuff. They're wrong. Because this is Mike Bickle, right? I've seen this in more than one big church. Unfortunately, have been been involved in a lot of churches that had scandals. I don't know. It's like I wasn't part of this one, thank goodness. Although, like I said, had I been able to go spend a week in Kansas City and stay in the prayer room, I would have done it. I would have. That would have been a dream. Let me just have a vacay there. I talked about it. I'm glad I didn't do it. Now, one more thing. Let me come back to this. All right. So I was thinking, and I was praying, and I'm like, I'm studying, and I'm looking at all this stuff. I'm looking at Micah Miller, and I'm looking at this other case that is the exact same case, just different names, different time, different place. I'm like, this is a problem. This is happening more and more in the church. So what, like God, what do we do? How do we stop this? Okay, we've got to stop the bleeding. It's not just bleeding. Like it's not like we've got a vein popped open. Like our legs and arms look, they're just barely hanging on. Okay, this is the body of Christ right now. This is a disaster, a literal train wreck victim. So I'm like, God, how do we know? How can we tell when things are going sideways? Like, what's some things? Have you not, Kathy? Welcome. You're in Kansas City and haven't heard of this? Yeah, well, you know what? Like I said, I think I live under a rock. And I used to, I just don't watch the news, okay? But even YouTube, I saw nothing about it until I started researching. And this is heartbreaking. Hey, Wisdom Sleuth, good to see ya. Same scam Scientology uses. We need to get rid of tax exempt status. I think that some would stay out if it's not financially lucrative. I absolutely agree. I know it would hurt a lot of people, like a lot of small churches. I know that would be a problem. But I'm going to tell you something. If they weren't tax exempt, we'd see how many people were called, right? Talked about that meme that I saw that basically said that let the church lose their tax exempt status. See how many pastors are still called by God to pastor, right? You know, I would normally say that's horrible, but I think that they maybe should do that for a couple of years and weed them all out. Weed them all out. Yeah, this was this was the most heartbreaking thing. And like I said, I started at a very young age being, and I'm not going to say the name of the place because you'd probably know. Some of you would know. If you're older, you know. When I was very young and very stupid and very trusting in church leadership and the anointing, because nobody ever taught me in church that anointing is not the same as character. Nobody ever said that. You know why they don't say that? They want you to think that. They want you to think that they're better than they are because of their gift and their anointing. They're not. So they don't want to tell you that secret. It would have done me a lot of good had somebody explained that to me. But I was very young. I was part of an international ministry in another state, not Alabama. If I said the name, you would probably know it. It was something that, like these people who went to IHOP, and interned, this was something that I wanted to do as soon as I got out of high school. And it took me a while to get there, but eventually I was able to maneuver myself to this place because they didn't have a prayer room like that, but I just want to be part of the ministry. They had a big place that you could work. There were all kind of jobs. And I just felt like, because this person that led it was so anointed, I thought I would be serving God. I felt like I was supposed to go. Now, I know I was supposed to go, but it wasn't for the exact reason I thought. But I wanted to go serve. Like, I didn't care. I didn't care what they paid me. I just wanted to go. So I understand very well the draw to places like IHOP. Now, I was there before, during, and after the worst scandal. It was so big. It was so big, this scandal. It went on and on and on. It had every national news, station for months and months. It was humongous. Guess where I worked during this time? Because we had all kind of stuff. There was so many things that you could do. I worked in public relations. The very worst place that you could possibly be. Guest services, public relations. Man, I saw every kind of evil thing you can imagine. And after all that, I heard the same thing that these people are complaining about, as they're telling us, well, you know what? We've had a hard time. We don't know if we can pay you this week because we're suffering some financial losses, and you need to just go ahead and give it over to God and let him take care of it. If we can't pay you, you just need to trust God. I'm thinking, my landlord ain't trusting God, and it's rent week. And I worked for you for 2 weeks. I mean, months. But the last 2 weeks, I've showed up. Can you not get my paycheck here? But that was, we were made to feel guilty if we expected a paycheck. After all God has done for us, and we can't, look, it's brainwashing. It is brainwashing. And there I was, I'm like, I had such a hard time with this. On one hand, I'm like, well, if this is what they're saying and they're right, I can't outgive God. God can take care of me. I mean, I shouldn't be doing this for money. I should be doing it for him. And the other part of me is like, that's a load of crap. I bet y'all getting paid. You have those warring sections. That's the way it was. Then I found out, as we all did, because the national media broke it, as they're telling us that we need to learn how to live poor and do without material things, just for God, what the executive leaders were making, I wanted to puke. I did. And I got so angry. I was like, how dare you? How dare you say this and say this is what God is saying when you are up there feasting like kings and you are making extravagant purchases daily, and you're telling us we need to trust God, knowing that we're going to be evicted out on the streets living in our cars. Man, that was hard. It was hard. I got so angry. Got angry at church. Got angry at leaders. I had a heck of a long time before I got over that. I did get over it, but it was hard. Let's see. So, after that, let's look at these signs, okay? Because these are, let me just, before we stop, because I know I've been talking a long time, but again, you have to understand the culture. This is what was happening when we had a very serious crime like Micah Miller's got swept under the rug. I don't know. It is horrifying. I think it's not as easy to tell what happened, but I think her name needs to be said, and I think her case needs to be heard, and I think somebody needs to remember her. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Now, there are red flags. If you see this in your churches, people, run. I don't care how long your mama and daddy have gone to this church and, whatever. I don't care what your ties are. When you see these signs, you better just put on your running shoes. But call them out first, okay? Do them a favor. They're going to hate you for it, but do them a favor and call them out first. Okay. Red flag number 1, you are trained to ignore your discernment, okay? Another word for discernment is that gut feeling. That gut feeling. Something ain't right here. I just noticed this interaction between people, and I'm like, or this person and the vibes, like something's something's off with this person that I've seen every day or every Sunday or whatever, a couple times a week. Something ain't right with them. Something ain't right with this situation. Let me give you an example, which this is kind of extreme. It wasn't just a small thing, but it kind of was. This is years ago. I was in a church with again, this was a different female pastor. Still a disaster pastor, but whatever. We're in church one day, and some old friend of hers comes. Now, he's a lot older guy. Yeah, he was nice enough. He looked a little sketch, but, whatever. A lot of people look sketch. So church is over. We're walking out, but she's not leaving yet. He's still there. I'm there. And I noticed she has left all of her stuff in one of the pews in the back, like towards the back. And I was just like, mental note, got to remind her, don't walk out. You left your purse in here. So this friend of hers, is just hanging around. He's behind me. I'm trying to walk out the door. She's already gone out the door. And he's just hanging around out there. And I'm like, why is he not going outside or going wherever everybody else was going? What's he doing in here? So I walked back over to him and I'm like, hey, you come in with us? And he's like, yeah, I'll be there in a minute. I'll be there in a few minutes. I looked at him and I noticed that her purse was right there. I had this gut feeling. He's going to take money from her. He wants to be in here because he's going to take money out of her purse. She always did carry a lot of cash. And I thought, nah. She's known him for all this time now. I'm just like, I'm a lunatic. I start walking out the door, and that gut feeling grabs me again. Don't leave. Don't leave. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I know. The Holy Spirit is talking. My discernment's talking to me. It's talking to me. And it's saying, he is going to take some money out of her purse. And I'm like, no, he ain't. No, he ain't. So I walk back in there, and I was like, he's like, why aren't you going? He was a little irritated. I said, nah, I'll just wait for you. I said, I'll have it right now. He's starting to get very agitated at me, very agitated. He's like, no, go on. I'm right behind you. I walked up behind him so that he would have to walk out first. I walked further up into the church and plopped myself down on a pew. And I looked him in the eyes and I said, nah, I'm good. I'll wait for you. He was so mad at me. Like, if you could see, like in the cartoons, you could see the steam coming out of his ears. So I was like, I'm not leaving. We'll go together. Not leaving until you do. So we both go in there. He ends up leaving. I tell her later, I'm like, look, I know this is your friend, but I'm going to tell you what happened. I stupidly thought that she would believe me. She was kind of irritated at me. He would never do that. He would never take money from me. And I was like, I'm telling you, not only was he showing every sign, but I have God in here saying, don't leave this room because he's fixing to take her money. She gets mad at me. No, you're wrong. Okay, fine. I'm like, fine. You can take your whole freaking purse next time. The whole thing. I'm not going to stop him. Okay? So when you have situations like that, they're training you to ignore that voice inside, even if it's small, whether it's big or small. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. The second one, encourage to ignore small signs. Okay, you have a feeling that there is something not right. Like you see, like maybe even the youth leader, or you see a Sunday school teacher, and a 13-year-old girl, and not you don't think anything of it, but then one Sunday you look at him and you think the vibe is just, I don't know, like something's wrong, and you try to ignore it. But then there's that small sign. He hasn't done anything wrong. He just puts his hand on her shoulder and pats her. That wasn't a fatherly pat. Like, you don't even think that way about him, right? So then you go to somebody and you're like, I don't know, maybe it's me, but I kind of got some weird vibes from brother so-and-so today. They don't want to hear it. No, sister, you're wrong. You're wrong. We talked about this last night. You're wrong. He's not like that. So they keep training us and encouraging us to not listen to the Holy Spirit. Then when we make a bad decision, we've ignored him for so long because you've told us to, we're wrong. Then now he's, saying something, and sometimes we miss it because they're training us to not rely on God and the Holy Spirit, but rely on somebody else, a leader, whatever they say. Let's rely on them. You see what happens? Let history, let the news explain to you what happens when you do that. Okay, another red flag is if you question some kind of authority. I don't mean standing up and making a horse's rear end out of yourself. I'm not talking about any of that kind of stuff. But if somebody is saying something, that is not biblical, or it just, you really think this could even be illegal or immoral or whatever, or you just don't feel like this is any kind of right, and you're not trying to be obnoxious, but if you just go to the elders and you're like, okay, well, I think I'm having a problem with this because I think this isn't sitting right with me, so could you explain to me why we're going to do this as a church, because it seems like it might not be the best thing or in other people's best interests or whatever. Or maybe the way they interpreted something was you have a problem with it. You're not trying to cause trouble. You're not trying to stir up a hornet's nest. You're just questioning. So could y'all explain to me? Because I don't get it. I'm having a little bit of trouble. And then they want to talk down to you. Act like you're stupid. Well, God said, boom, trump card. God told us. Who are you? Do you lead this church? No. The leadership and I have discussed this, and we feel that God has told us this is what we're doing. This is and you feel humiliated. You feel talked down to, and like you don't have the option to question. You feel like it's not okay. Oh, I really overstepped my bounds or whatever. Anybody cannot answer a question without berating you or making you feel stupid or making you feel like you've done something wrong by a simple question. Explain this to me. Then that is a huge red flag. Okay? It's waving. These flags are getting bigger as we're going. The next one, if you are told to keep quiet, oh my God, if they had just listened to this at IHOP. You find out that somebody is doing something. Remember, yes, the whole thing, we're about restoration, but we're not. There's a difference. People like to use this restoration scriptures like, yeah, we repent and we restore. Yes, God does, but that's on God. That's on God. What you need to do is you need to pull them out of position, all right? Only God knows when they're restored. You can't say, okay, you go into a 6-month restoration program or a year's restoration program, and you pray and you fast and you do all that, and a year you can come back to ministry. No, because you don't know how long it's going to take for that heart to really be changed, if it ever is. It might take 10 years. It might take 2 months. We don't know at what point that somebody is restored. And how are you as they've got these restoration programs, it's crap. I mean, it's a good idea. You can use maybe some guidelines. But you see somebody and they're like, oh, well, no, we have to forgive. We have to restore. We all make messes. We all screw up. Yeah, we do. We sure do. But, when someone asks you to not tell, okay? It's like, yes, we know this brother's been in a sin. The leadership has talked to him. He's come clean. He's in a restoration program, okay? Don't talk about it. Don't gossip. Don't talk about it. Okay, I understand there's a difference, though, between gossip and then just letting people know. Because I'm going to tell you something. there is a pedophile in leadership in my church, and my kids have been exposed to him, and maybe nothing has happened, okay? Maybe it's been fine, but there's an incident with another child, and then you're going to cover that up, and maybe he steps down from his position for a year and somebody else takes it over, and then he's back up there next year or in 6 months or whatever. He's back in that same position. Well, I don't know, because they told everybody else in leadership to let's not say anything. Let's just restore brother so-and-so. Then my kids are back in that Sunday school class. Let me tell you something. I will want to beat the stew out of anybody who didn't tell me. Because you are putting my kids at risk, or me, or whatever the situation is. It's not gossip. It's like, you know what? If more people were publicly, I don't want to say humiliated. I'm not trying to humiliate people. But if you're actions were known, it would be harder for you to do those actions again. Right? First of all, everybody would know. Well, that's humiliating. Yes, it is. But also, you would be way more apt to think, I never want to be in this position again. Everybody knows I'm humiliated. I'm stripped of my, whatever. It's not about humiliation. It's about you have to come to that place of being over yourself. It's like, I think it was Melanie Lynn said the other day when we were on a live, she said, I spent 24, like she shoplifted or something when she was young. She's like, I spent 24 hours in jail and it was the worst experience I ever had. She was humiliated. But she said, when I got out, I never did that again. Sometimes you need that 24 hours in jail. That 24 hours, however long that translates into, is what is going to change you. When it's swept under the rug, when you're told to keep quiet, and they don't want anybody to know, that's not going to change you. You're not motivated. And anybody who asks you to do that, that's not God. That's not God. I'm not saying to be ugly and hateful. What I'm saying is you need to tell truth and you need to let people know who could be affected by that. All right? Somebody is embezzling from the church and I don't know about it because y'all settled the matter quietly. She worked there for 10 years. She took $250,000, but y'all didn't want a big scandal. So y'all settled it. Then I'm like, you know what? I don't know why she left the church, but she's a good bookkeeper. I'm going to hire her for my business. What? Come on. Some things need to be told. All right, here's the number one thing that you need to watch out for. If your leader is on a pedestal, okay? If your church doesn't work without him, or there's no like Mike Bickle, okay? He was IHOP. Yes, there were a lot of leaders, but that's why they couldn't lose him. That's why they covered it up, because he's on a pedestal. And I've heard some people say that like they were kind of afraid of him because they knew like he was what he said. His word was law. That happens a lot. What you say goes. That is not okay. Because then there is no checks and balances. Who is there to police you? What is that saying? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is what is going to happen every single time. So if your leader is on some kind of pedestal and it's like, well, yeah, that was the final word. The pastor said, I do have a problem with that. It needs to be a joint decision. It needs to be more than one person in power. And it needs to be, like I said this last night, if you didn't catch any of this, remember when we were talking about narcissism and how they have their flying monkeys. If you want to have the honest potential of having any kind of business, ministry, whatever, without having, these disasters, you need to surround yourself with people who are not yes men. I mean, don't pick out somebody you can't get along with at all. Although one in the crowd wouldn't be that bad. You need to surround yourself with people who are not just going to buy into your BS and say, oh, well, yeah, you know what? That's a great idea. Yeah, let's do that. Whatever you say. You need somebody in that crowd that's going to be like, you have lost your mind. That's going to cost way too much. That's going to do this. That's going to do that. You cannot put people on a pedestal, again, because it is an anointing that they have. It is a gift. It is not character. When you are in this place where you don't allow people to talk and you want them to cover, that's not integrity. If you're leading that kind of culture, there is nothing godly about that at all. Not in the least bit. All right? I'm sorry. I just got I just got carried away. Catherine Grace. Hello. If I know something, I'm not going to be moved by who does or who does not agree. I care, but I'm not changing my mind if someone in authority doesn't agree. Good for you. Yeah. Because you know what? You're more valuable. People don't appreciate you. They don't appreciate me either. But you're more valuable to someone when you tell the truth and you try to keep them from making a mistake. Because somebody could have come a long time ago to Misty or to some of these other people and said, you know what? It's gonna be bad. I'm not gonna lie to you. The scandal's gonna be bad. It's gonna be bad. You're gonna have a time where your life is rough. But you need to stop now and come clean and let God rebuild you. Instead, she's had all these years of torment, and that kind of makes me feel bad. You're tormented by what someone else can do to you because you're terrified of the truth. Let's see. I will say I've never been burned by a church or experienced a church hurt. Really? Wow. That's amazing. I mean, honestly, that is great. You're very, very blessed to not have. Yeah, you're right, Wisdom. Yeah. Give me your youngest, most beautiful daughters. Don't ask me any questions. Keep your mouth shut. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I know I have gone on and on. It's just, like I said, this was hard. This was a hard one. It's a sad one. And I don't feel like, but here's the thing. I don't feel like I don't think it's fair for me to call out corruption in another state with law enforcement, whatever I'm working on. I don't think it's fair for me to call out places and say you're wrong and this is terrible and never have anything personal. You know what I'm saying? How am I going to call them out when there's stuff like, if I didn't talk about IHOP, which is at one time meant so much to me. That's kind of, what's the word? Hypocritical, right? It is. It hurts. It was terrible. I'm not going to cover it, though. I'm not going to, cover it up. It is what it is, and you know what? Now the whole world knows. But yeah, that y'all that don't, that don't know, there was, I'll give you a sneak peek of another case, because we're going to compare it. I'm going to try to do this one tomorrow. We're going to compare it to Micah Miller. This is a story about two younger people, honestly, that were kind of, in a way, raised up into IHOP, into the prayer room culture, and how it got so twisted. The leadership got so twisted and so bad, and it was covered up. And because of the anointing, because of the charisma of one of the leaders, we end up with someone, a very precious soul, 2 months married, who supposedly, maybe did, unalive herself because of the weight and the pressure and the scandal of what she couldn't handle, okay? If she did do this, it's because she couldn't handle the horror of what was going on. Not only in her own personal life and marriage, but in the church at the same time. This is all around the same time. So we're going to talk about that, because even if we can't get a resolution for her like we want so bad for JP, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody. The guy, her husband, is like, he's doing his own thing. I'm not trying to hurt him. But what I'm saying is, I don't know what happened to her. Her family's not sure what happened to her. But I know what didn't happen. She didn't have the support. She didn't have anybody to go to. And now, you know, except for the intervention of YouTube and TikTok and everything else, Micah would be in the same place. Like, people just going, you know, on with their lives, doing whatever the heck they want to in the name of God. Okay? So we'll talk about that later. Of course, I will definitely cover anything of Micah Miller as it comes up. I know there's some new things, but I haven't gotten there yet. We'll probably talk about Micah a little bit tomorrow, and then I work the rest of the week. So, yeah, it's going to be busy. I hope y'all have a great day. Comment below. Tell me, had you heard about this? Did it surprise you at all? I don't know. Tell me your thoughts on all of the church stuff. What should we say? What should we not say? When is it important to talk? When is it not? I don't know. I think it's always important to talk, but that's my opinion. All right. Goodness gracious. My computer's all messed up, y'all. I don't know what's going on here. All right, let me just play this one. Hold on. All right. Whatever you do, stay silky, okay? Bye-bye.